Hey, look at that. FuelTech FT600. Project Resurrection version 2.0. You can't read the board, but we'll zoom in on that in a minute. School is now in session. First thing that we need to talk about is the actual deadline, which is going to be Labor Day weekend. We need this thing up and running by Labor Day. The date on that is going to be August 31st to September 2nd, but obviously it has to be ready by the 31st. I mean, I guess we could still be building it while we're driving down the road, but that's not going to work out so well. So August 31st. Boom, that's our deadline. So we have an August 31st deadline to get this entire car up and running. Now, previous to the parking it in the lawn and letting it sit for 2.5 years, it's been sitting for longer than that, but that's how long it's been sitting since I worked on it. The main thing that was holding me back was I needed a transmission. And this car had just a RS or a naturally aspirated cable clutch 5-speed transmission in it before. The advantage to that is it uses a 390 final drive ratio, which I like the ratios of a lot. So my options were, there's a couple of WRX years that use a 5-speed with a 390 ratio in them. And that was kind of my go-to, and that was originally the plan. Now, there's also the option of a 6-speed, but we'd probably have to swap the rear end or get a 6-speed that had a 1-to-1 center split, which is a little bit tricky to find the correct one to get that 390 in the rear. Now, I only say I want a 390 in the rear because there's already a differential back there, but we need to dump the fluid and make sure that differential is actually still good. There was some noise that was coming out of that diff the last time I actually drove the car before it was stolen, and there's a good chance that that was those brake shoes that you saw me tear off in the other video. But if it wasn't those brake shoes, it could have actually been the differential. I was kind of leaning towards the differential, but then obviously the brakes are now failed. It could have also been a wheel bearing noise. Just there was some noise in the back of the car. So we've got a little over a month, a lot of work to do. Obviously we need a transmission. Now with the transmission, we also need a clutch. I think in the car there's a clutch. I just looked through the window. There she is down there. It's an ACT. I'm not sure. I think it's an ACT like a street light or something of that nature. I believe it was a, I think 1,000 spider nest eggs hatched in here. Oh. So look at that. It's actually not in terrible shape. The fingers are a little crusty on this pressure plate. God, that guy's big. So we've got some kind of crusty fingers on the pressure plate, but that's all just surface. The important piece, that's looking pretty fresh. It is used, but I think that can just be cleaned off. Yeah, it's not looking so bad. Let's check on, so the disc, I've got flywheel bolts, not looking so hot. The disc is not a big power disc for sure, but it looks like it has a lot of life in it. Again, it's just some surface rust. And the flywheel got a little bit of rust there, but realistically, that flywheel's in pretty good shape. Now that is a 5-speed flywheel. It's not stepped like the 6-speed or like the newer 5-speed, so that's going to be a, oh wait, where'd that go? No, that's a push style. Interesting. So it's a push style 5. So that's going to be like a 2.5 RS clutch. Probably I'd have to look at the part number on it, but probably not going to hold a ton of power. But if it works and it gets us down the road, might be worth using. Save some money on this iteration. Okay, my camera was being dumb because it's like 100 degrees in my garage and it kept shutting off. So I just went ahead, and I know you guys don't want to watch me write anyway. I went ahead and populated my board, and I'm gonna redo this video, which is gonna make it much better and faster for all of you to watch and get the information to you faster and more efficient and not like a classroom lecture. So here we go. Let's zoom in on the, come on camera, come off the thing. Let's zoom in on the board here. All right, so first thing up, transmission, 5 or 6 speed. Well, we don't really know, but right now we are leaning kind of towards just doing the RA style, not RA style, but the Impreza style transmission with this hydraulic clutch setup. So we need the clutch setup, but the transmission itself we may not need. We're still gonna build a transmission for the future, but for getting this thing on the road by the deadline, we might not do it. Fuel system, stock tank or fuel cell. What's it gonna be? 10 gallon if it's a fuel cell, stock tank. The cool thing about the Impreza tank on this car is it's a different design. In fact, I have a whiteboard, let me just draw it for you. So a traditional Subaru fuel tank looks like this. And then the fuel pump sits over here. Yeah, that's what I drew. There's a little fuel sock at the bottom, and this stuff comes out the top. All right, so that's what a traditional Subaru fuel tank looks like. Now, the Impreza tank, and this is where the drive line and the exhaust goes through, and so they call it a saddle tank. The Impreza, and then because of that, it actually has to use a venturi and then siphon with another little guy over here that siphons to that side of the saddle to get this. I have blue. So that when you have fuel over here, it'll siphon it over here and keep your fuel level the same. And obviously if it's full, it doesn't matter. Now the Impreza tank, which is kind of cool, doesn't have a siphon tube because it just looks like this. Well, crap. Yeah, that's what the Impreza tank looks like. It looks like a Toyota water pump gasket, kind of. So the fuel doesn't ever have anywhere else to go. So it's just full or it's empty and the fuel pump stays submerged. That's the most ideal design Subaru's ever done, but it does cost a little bit of capacity. And so they, in order to get more capacity, gave it the second saddle. Well, unfortunately, some jagoff decided to poke holes in it, and now it doesn't work. So if we can find one that's an Impreza tank, I'm gonna just do that for simplicity. If I can't find one, I'm gonna keep my eyes open. I might call Radium and see if they have any seconds or takeoffs or whatever for like a 10-gallon tank cell, or maybe I'll just do China, go on Alibaba or Temu or something and get us a fuel cell. Temu fuel cell, and what could go wrong? Let's see here. Injectors. I'm leaning towards FIC 1200s because I already have EV1 style connectors. The FIC 1200s and the FIC 1650s both use those connectors, and the 1200s will be easier to get the car running on, and they'll run better at the power level because, again, we just have a little tiny TD06 20G back there in the corner. It's, you know, good for mid 400s at best. On ethanol, those injectors will be enough, especially because I can just bump the fuel pressure up if I need to because I have a Walbro 450. This may or may not be intact. It may or may not be in the tank. It may have been stolen. I haven't assessed that damage completely. It may be damaged, so we obviously have to test it. Either way, it's already, there was one in the car. It's set up for one. That should be pretty simple. Miscellaneous fab radiator support. For this, let me go ahead and get rid of the whiteboard for a second. For this radiator support, my plan is, in fact, I'll get the Sharpie for this one. My plan is actually to go ahead and cut about half. Upper core supports, they're only structural to this spot weld right there. You can't really see it because I don't have good light, but everything past that spot weld isn't really structural. They've got this dimple here. It may be providing some structure, but if I fold this edge under, it should give me strength anyway. I had some rivets. God, the spider webs are everywhere. But basically, my plan is to cut I'll use a straight edge instead of my wiggly arm. So my plan is basically to cut that, and obviously I'll leave like a seam allowance. So I'll actually cut this inner line, and then I'll fold it under, basically roll a bead on it, which will keep it with some strength. It doesn't do a lot. Most of your support happens on the lower, down at the bottom. You can't really see it, but down at the bottom is where most of the support on the frame happens. This does very little. I mean, you can see from the factory, it just bends. So, because it doesn't do anything, and we don't need it, we're gonna get rid of it. And what that's gonna do, from a Subaru standpoint, one of the downsides to Subarus, even if I'm in my position, I can barely get my finger between there because this radiator's thicker. And this is a Mishimoto. I like Mishimoto radiators mainly because if I took this and stabbed a hole in it because I was mad, they'd send you a new one. They have the best warranty in the entire business. But if I could lean it forward that, 3/4 or an inch or so, that would give me additional space behind it for air to escape. Because right now, the way these GC chassis are, there's no room for air to come out. And I don't get a fan on this side because of the way I built my intercooler pipe here. So because of how the intercooler pipe is, I only get one cooling fan. Should be fine, but if it's not, I have a strategy to cool this car off. If you've been watching my channel long enough, you'll know what that strategy is. If you haven't, you're just gonna have to stay tuned while we get into that. But anyway, that's the plan for the radiator. Basically tilt it forward as far as I can. I may have to clearance the hood a little bit to make that work. We'll see, whatever. It'll be custom. All right, so obviously I need to check the health of the motor. That's actually one of the bigger priorities here. Let's go ahead and put a big star next to that one, because as I stated in my last video, it didn't have injectors in it. And if you look down the holes, they look clean, but I don't know. The hood was shut, but you can see how much came in, even though the hood was shut, and how much water damage we have on stuff, just corrosion on the aluminum. So I may have to use some soda or walnut or something and blast the backside of the valves if they've got this crap on them. And to do that, I have to pull the intake manifold off, and in that process, I'm just going to check and make sure that everything else is looking good, nothing's cracked. There wasn't water or coolant in it, so I don't think it froze or anything like that. But if there was rainwater that got in there and it froze, it could have done some damage. Anyway, we're going to tear it apart, basically just tear the top end off and double check everything. All right, before my camera overheats again, I don't know why it's overheating. I mean, it's like 100 degrees in here, but anyway. All right, so electronics. I have finished wiring the FuelTech. It's actually mostly done. There's a few, stragglers. These I got to figure out what they were for. Looks like I'm going to guess this is probably for fuel pressure sensor, which I have on there. And then an oil temperature would be in the pan. I doubt that I wired anything for that, but I do want to do those two sensors. Specifically fuel pressure, there's a lot of tuning that you can do with fuel pressure and safety and all kinds of things. And fuel pressure is what kills Subaru engines, especially if you start running multiple pumps and things like that. So having fuel pressure offsets is really important. For the body of the car, in my previous videos you may have seen, I gutted effectively all the wiring. So I have the turn signal stuff, but it's not in the car currently. And because of that, there is no headlight, taillights, turn signals, any of that. All of that has always been planned to put back in the car, but currently it's not there. Now I do have headlight plugs, and they're not wired, so I need to get all that harness rebuilt. To do that, I may end up running some kind of a PDM. I'll do that in green. Where'd my green go? Oh, it's right here. So we may do a PDM And what PDMs are is they're basically just a little electronic fuse and relay box that takes care of a lot of the work for you and really cleans it all up and allows you to data log. I'll be able to data log when I hit the brakes and things like that, much easier. And then you can pass that information back to the engine computer, which basically frees up a bunch of inputs on your engine management because you're getting that information from the PDM. So pretty cool stuff. Or I guess it's going to be a PDM or some kind of relay box. All right, and I told you I wasn't going to be writing on it, making you watch for school. But anyway, so that'll give me turn signals, hazards. I'm going to probably use the factory multi-switch for those. Brake and tail lights will come from the pedal, and the headlights will also turn on the tail lights. I should have said headlights, tail lights, and then brake. Anyway, that's all fine. So once we have brake lights, clearly, as you saw in the last video, we got issues with our brakes. The brakes all around are just totally jacked. So we need to replace all the rotors, all the pads, and we need to check the calipers and see if those need to be replaced. We need to check all the wheel bearings. I checked the rears, they felt crusty. I don't know if it was because the axles just have like spot rust on them or what, but obviously good wheel bearings make a fast car. That's just parasitic loss if they're bad. If we have to replace the wheel bearings, we may look at replacing the hubs as well. We'll see. The next thing is swap the suspension from the wagon. The wagon has pretty cool suspension. It's not KYBs. It's well, they're Coney yellow struts, and they're modified into factory housings, and then it has Tanabe GR. I think they're GRs. It's basically their grip series springs on it. They handle and feel really good. The last thing is the Hydro e-brake, and that's because we took our brake shoes out and I don't want to put them back. All that weight gets to go in the garbage. It actually went in the garbage today. Not the garbage, but the recycler. Anyway, let's zoom out on the list. So, Project Resurrection, August 31st, all that stuff. Some weird thing that looks kind of like a water pump from a Toyota, maybe. If you know that joke, you're a cool person. All right. So what I need to do immediately is order everything marked orange. So I need to order this oil temp sensor, get that. I need to get all of the brake components, get that. I need to check those wheel bearings so I can get those parts ordered in. I need to get those injectors. We have them at the shop, but you know, I just have to procure them, put them into my possession. All of the clutch hydraulics and everything, that's probably going to be a trip to the junkyard. I guess I could order new, we'll see. Junkyards are getting kind of picked for things like this, so might not be very easy to get. Obviously, I need to check the health on that engine, pull it all apart, make sure everything looks good. So, this weekend, we're going to hopefully start doing some installs and get at least something on this list knocked off. So thanks for watching. Make sure you guys stay tuned. Oh, I pulled the FuelTech out because when I was building the dash, I never finished and drilled holes in the back for the wires. And I want to plug in and make sure this works, because if this doesn't work, we're going to be in trouble. I don't see any reason why it won't work. It's just been sitting, and it doesn't look corroded or anything. It's a pretty well sealed unit. So this is the whole ECU. For anybody that doesn't know anything about FuelTech FT600, there's actually a few different FuelTechs. This is was the top of the line. Now there's the FT700, but it's a dash, it's a touch screen. You can tune the whole car through this without a laptop if you want. You can also use a laptop, makes life a little easier. But it has shift lights built in, it has turn signal lights built in if you want to hook all that up. It's just got a map sensor, 10-bar map sensor, so pretty spicy map sensor, all the boost you could ever want. Two 34-pin connectors, lots of I/O, way more than most, and it just works. It's not the best for a Subaru, but it'll get the job done. Should be able to just plug it in to any old USB. Hey, look at that! FuelTech FT600, blank map file. Yeah, that's fine. So it works. It fires up. That's what's really important. I needed to check that because these are quite expensive, and if it didn't work, it'd be problematic. But like I said, you can actually tune the whole car from beginning to end if you so chose.